There's a passage that I love. The message today is chosen generation. Chosen generation. And I think this gives us such a proper way of aligning our hearts, our minds to why it's important for these generations, for our generations to come together. I'll never forget, as you look for Psalms 145. If you have your physical Bible, I remember one of my Sunday school teachers, oh my gosh, when I was a kid, and everybody walked around with Bibles. And I remember having a hard time finding Psalms, and I was flipping pages. I remember my Sunday school teacher back then says, look, just get it and open it up to the middle. And I remember, and it blew my mind. I remember opening it up to the middle, and it was Psalms. I was like, how does she do that? But anyway, all these years later, it stuck with me. So anyway, anytime I want to go now, of course, as a pastor, I do have to note, now that I'm talking about that, I did get the award for learning my New Testament and Old Testament. I beat every one there. Of course, there's only 10 of us. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But I'm grateful. Psalms 145. I believe this gives us the proper understanding of why it's important. And I want to share something that I haven't taught before. It is probably something that I believe the Lord showed me here in these last few days and want to share with you. Psalms 145. It says, I will extol you, my God, O King. And really what he's saying is my God and my King. He says, and I will bless your name forever and ever. Everyone say forever and ever. And I want you to listen to his heart, and I want you to hear what he's saying. Verse 2 says, every day I will bless you. He said, and I will praise your name forever and ever. Listen to that. He's already said that twice. I will praise your name forever and ever. I will bless you every day. Verse 3. Now he's getting to why he's doing this. Because great is the Lord and greatly to be praised. And this is the kicker right here that for many years I've completely overlooked. And his greatness is unsearchable. His greatness is unsearchable, right? Incomprehensible. There might be different translations that you have. And maybe it might say something else other than unsearchable. Because unsearchable, of course, we honor King James, even though his name has been maligned. But he did give us one of the best versions of the Bible, even though he did have his issues. But yet he financed one of the best versions or translations of the Bible. But he says unsearchable. And you might think unsearchable means we can't look for it. No, it doesn't mean that. It literally means it's uncomprehendable. What it means is that if he would search for it over and over and over, he would not have enough time in order to understand and comprehend it. And then this is what it says. As we honor the youth today, it says, one generation shall praise your works to another and shall declare your mighty acts. Once again, one generation shall praise your works to another and shall declare your mighty acts. This is a passage that I love. This is a passage that I'm very familiar with, but yet have overlooked a couple of things in the past. And as we were putting this idea together of the youth going over the core values, which I thought was a great idea, they did a great job in doing that. And as they started planning to have this youth take over, to have the youth be part of our daily service and serving and in different areas, more and more I kept thinking of this. More and more I kept realizing, unfortunately, the failures that I have had, the failures that maybe my generation has had, and maybe even previous ones. The one thing that I want to make everyone know, I know we keep saying next generation, it's not inaccurate. It is proper to say that, the next generation. What is a generation? A generation, and what part of you is those that are tied to a certain time, those that are tied to a certain season, those that are tied to a certain age. I couldn't even say that. It didn't even come out. But age, and I'll give you an example. There's different ideas. Some people say a generation's 80 years. Kind of difficult, kind of stretching. But many would love to believe, and it's to say a generation is 40 years. So let's just say this, for the sake of it. We can isolate different generations by saying 20 years. We can say those that are in their 20s, that's a generation. Those that are in their 30s, that's a generation. Those that are in their 40s, and so on and so forth. But I want to give you a spiritual way to look at this, is that I believe with all my heart that this generation, you would say, what generation? This generation will see the rapture of the church. And what is that generation? It's the generation after the church is born. So that includes us. It's the generation that started when Jesus conquered the cross, conquered the grave, resurrected, and he was the first fruit for all humanity. Whenever Jesus did those things and walked out of that tomb, it began a generation that didn't have to fall into the power of sin, that in fact through his death, sacrifice, his resurrection, now there's a generation. Youth, I know some of you heard this, but please listen, because this pertains to you. And so here's what I'm going to tell you. That day started a generation that because of Jesus is able to overcome sin. A generation that if they believe in Jesus, though they may be dead, yet shall they live. We are this generation. And I need everyone here to understand, regardless of how old you are. But there's a mistake that I believe that I made, and I can only speak of myself. And I can understand what some of our previous generations were trying to get at. But I have to say that I fell into it as well. I come from a generation where, as a youth director, we would have our youth together, and we would have a great time. We would get together on Friday nights, every Friday. We would worship, we would have a word, and then we would have games. And I remember that every Sunday, I would have a conversation that I was going to have by a pastor, by my pastor, by an adult, by someone's grandmother, that was going to say this: you know how many chairs you broke? You know the walls that you made a hole in? Y'all don't take care of nothing. Y'all don't give, y'all don't pay for anything, but y'all destroying everything. And they weren't wrong. But here's the part where I failed. I would apologize. I would say, guys, we got to be careful. We can't break 5 chairs, maybe 2, but we can't be breaking 5. No. But we'd say, okay, you need to, but it was, here's the say, and there's a couple of people that are not young anymore. I wouldn't call them old, but they were part of that. Gilbert's back there smiling. But here's what I'm going to say. Here's where I failed. Is that I apologized, but I failed to say, in the midst of this, we're apologized, but yet we're raising a generation. And these kids that broke these chairs and acted the way they did, they're not in the street. They're in the church house on a Friday night, worshiping God. But I failed to realize that and only saw the broken chairs and everything else. Now, fast forward many years, fell into the same rut of looking to a generation and waiting for a generation to self-rise, to self-equip, to appreciate things. And so here's what happens, is that we have a generation that I grew up in that were more concerned, and I'm not trying to scold anybody. Many times, I said this morning, many times a scolding and an encouragement are very similar. It just depends how your heart receives it. Can I get a witness? Yeah. But I caught myself in the same way, saying, why are they wearing those jeans? Why are they wearing those tennis shoes? Why are they wearing those caps? Instead of looking at the entire picture. The entire picture. And here we find ourselves, church, once again, unfortunately, in a crossroads where we have to understand, everyone here from the youth in the back. I need some help back there if y'all can keep the youth focused just for 20 minutes. Because this is not against them, this is for them. And this is not against us, but this is for us. Because this is one of the most important passages or sermons that I would have ever given at this church. Because if we don't start capturing and understanding that if we don't bridge the gap and connect with generations, we will be another church that dies within the next 10 years. Because you're either growing or you're dying. And many churches all around our neighborhoods, all around our cities. And you can look at the West Coast. I know everybody picks on them, but for a good reason. You can look on the East Coast. And I can tell you that some of the greatest revivals happen on the West Coast. And look the condition that they're at. Some of the greatest revivals happen on the East Coast. And look where they're at. Because what happened there is that one way or another, a generation stopped connecting to each other. One way or another, we started looking at what we were wearing instead of building and equipping a generation. And I want to point to you that the first sentence is a masterful way of David saying something to us today. He says, I will, everyone say, I will. And everyone say, my God. And everyone said, say this, my king. I know he says, oh king, but we're going to say my king. That's what he meant. And this is what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to try to do my very best to get us to understand how to connect with each other. No, we won't understand everything. We won't agree with everything. Can I get a witness? Right. But here's the way that we connect. Number one, he says this, I will extol you, God. He says, I, me, myself, and I. I'm not looking for public opinion. I'm not looking for public applause. I, myself, regardless of what others do, regardless of what others say, I, God, you will extol you. No one else. The second thing that he says is this. He says, my God. You're my God. You're not my Nana's God. You're not my Popo's God. You're not my Tia. You're not my auntie's God. You're my God. And let me tell you why this is so important, guys. Is because we'll never connect or convince a generation of your God if he's not your personal God. If we're more in line to getting our way, because it's worked out like that. I've been in church all my life. And if your children or whoever's under you or whoever's around you, if you're a person that came to the Lord late, if you've been, I want you to, what will people around you or closest to you in your home say about your experience at church? Will they walk in here saying, I'm here to see God? Or are they here to see, oh yeah, they told me to stay away from that one. They told me to stay away from that one. Oh, they told me all about that one. This is what the psalmist was saying. When this generation that comes, they're going to know one thing. They're going to know about me, that I've chosen to honor one God. His name is above every name. I don't care what others do. I don't care what others believe. There's one thing for sure. He's my God, and there's no questions about it. That's what we have to be. And if we're ever going to convince someone about God, he has to be your God. If not, you'll never convince them. The third thing that he says is this: my king, O king, my king. Why is that important? Because David was a king. And this is what he's saying. I know I'm a king by title. This is what David was saying. I know I'm a king, but I'm just here because of the king. I'm occupying a throne, but there's a throne that's above every other thrones, and I know it's his and it's not my own. See, somewhere down the line, someone has convinced us that our talent or our calling is greater than our king. I'm here to set the record straight. Hey, I'm glad you've been called. I'm glad you feel chosen. I'm glad all those things. But the day that you put the throne of God under your calling, you're messed up. Because your heart will never be in the right place to actually occupy the right calling and to give the right heart to people. That's why David said, wait a minute, I will extol you. I don't care what others do, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to exalt you. Number two, you're going to be my God. The days are over that this is the God of my family, the God and the religion of my family, the God of my mama. No. It has to be our God. Is he your God? And thirdly, does everything, David said, my king. Here's another well, for every believer that's here. Does everything fall at the feet of Jesus when you approach him? When you approach God, does your job get in line with God? Or are we still trying to get our God to get in line with our schedule? This is what David was saying. And he said, for me to connect with the generation, this is what I need. I need to let this generation know that it's my choice to honor God and no one else's. I'm not being forced. You know how Paul said it? Everyone say living sacrifices. Say it again, living sacrifices. We've covered this, so I won't take long. But what is a living sacrifice? One that doesn't have to be bound. The one that doesn't have to be forced. One that doesn't have to be coerced. One that doesn't have to be manipulated. But a group of people that willingly, with all their heart, will sacrifice their first day of the week to come, tired or not, hungry or not, sleepy or not, and say, God, I'm a living sacrifice because I don't have to be pushed to worship you. I do it willingly. I don't have to be bound and forced to do something to serve you. I do it willingly. That's a living sacrifice. So this is what David is saying. I will. I don't have to be forced. I don't have to be prodded. I don't have to be affirmed. I don't have to be encouraged. I don't have to be, what's the word that everyone, I guess affirm, right? Patted on the back. I've said this for many years. I love to pat you on the back. But if you need a kick in the butt, I want to do that for you as well. Because I'm here to tell you sometimes that's what we need. I love what was said in the last few days. It's such a blessing, such an anointed time. And I don't use those words lightly or loosely. Church, if we're not careful, if what brought you here was that you needed a spiritual hospital, I'm glad. And I'm glad, I hope God healed you, and I hope God has done that. The second reason that you're here, the second transition after a hospital, is we're here because we need family. We need family. And the third reason we're here is to build an army for Jesus Christ. Here's our problem. Many of us got stuck in the hospital, and you're still requiring visitations, and you're still requiring help, and you're still requiring attention. and you're too busy licking your wounds instead of being part of the family. And while you remain in ICU hospital, spiritually speaking, don't you dare get mad when there's people that have made it all the way to be an army and built an army. Don't you dare get mad at them. As a pastor, I'm wondering this: how long is it going to take for you to let the healer do the work in your heart, get you to be part of the family, and get you part of this army? We have churches that just represent a hospital. And many times we run there. And it's easy for us to leave somewhere. They're being hard. They're being harsh. We're here to make an army. The devil already has one. And we're too busy getting our wounds for the last 10 or 20 years bandaged up. We're still in the infirmity. But there's a position for every one of us as believers, because there's souls that the devil still has, that they need to be free. And yes, you can serve in the hospital. Yes, we can serve at the family. But at the end of the day, we have to be the army of God here on earth. It's, I will extol you, my God and my King. Everyone say forever and ever. This is the part that got me. The part that got me is that this is what he's saying. I don't know if you can put verse 3 in a different translation, maybe the New Living Translation. See if you could do that. Just so we can get another. It says, no one can measure. That's a good one. No one can measure your greatness. King James says unsearchable. New Living Translation says no one can measure. No one can wrap their mind around it. Here's where we need each other. Young people, this is where we need you. Adults, this is where we need the youth. I'm going to ask Jake to go ahead and come up here again. Please come up here, son. He didn't know we were going to do this until this morning, and I didn't know I was going to do this till this morning. But what David was saying, this is why we need each other. This is why we can't look at the other. And I've done this, and I apologize, and I'm so sorry for this. We are the generation that God has called for this time. We might be different ages, but we are the generation. We are the chosen generation. Are you with me? This is what David was saying. Great is the Lord and most worthy to be praised. No one can measure his greatness. And then now go to verse 4 and it says, and one generation shall praise his works to another. You know what David was saying? King David was saying this. All my life I've honored you, God. When I was in the pastures, I honored you. When I was on the battlefield, I honored you. When I was a king, I honored you. And now I have this issue that my life is ending. And I've realized that I still can't comprehend your greatness. And what I need now, since trying to understand and praising you every day is going to fall short, I need something else. My strength are failing, but there's a generation that's still strong. He was saying, you know what, my time to be effective is ending, but there's a generation. This is why we need this generation. Why? Because when he looks this way and he sees a gray-haired guy, don't laugh like that, it kind of hurts my feelings. When this generation talks about, look at that. I can't even say fashion, because I know I'm not fashionable. And they're saying, look at, what do y'all call it? Y'all say all kinds of stuff. Look at his swag. Did y'all even still use that? I don't know. See, the fit. Look at that fit, right? Something like that. What is that? Look at those shoes. Look at those pants. Look at that corduroy. Who wears corduroy these days? No one does. No one does. Pastor does. Listen. But I hope what he sees when he looks this way and gets beyond the age and gets beyond the limitation, I hope he says, but you know what? I've seen him fight battles and always trust God. I've seen him be in the lowest and still trust God. I've seen when people are against him, but yet he still loved him. How does he do that? And guess what he says? Although challenging, I have to respect that generation that hasn't stopped worshiping God through thick and thin. And then I look at him and think, if I had his youth, how much more could I do for God? If I had his strength, and I don't know if it's on purpose, he wore this tight shirt, but if I had these guns here, how much more would I do for God? If I had his talent, how much more could I do for God? But unfortunately, what we do is this. Look at that. Look at that. And you know what he does? Look at that. Look at that. Oh, he's never going to change. He always does it that way. Oh, but if we could just look at each other and inspire each other and praise the same God and say, look what he's doing. Look what he's gaining. Look how he's taught his children at an early age. Look at the peace that he has with his children that I didn't have. Oh, but if he would just look and say, you know what? He doesn't have the strength, but he has wisdom. He didn't have patience, but you know what? He has it now. Then guess what? We'll be praising the greatness of a God. And I realize one thing, and I think this is where David was. I'm getting to the end of my life. I'm not saying this. I'm saying David is, all right? And some of you are already thinking, what is he going to announce? I ain't announcing nothing. This is what David was saying. I worship him every day. And forever and ever I'll do this. But I'll still fall short in telling you how great he is. But where I fall short, this is where the generation comes. Because where it ends, they continue. Thank you, son. Well, we have to realize, church, if we don't understand this quickly, we're going to be a church that dies. Because we wouldn't have connected to a generation. We wouldn't have learned, instead of looking at the differences, we look at the commonalities and say, but it's our God. I'm here to tell you that I stand on this platform right here. It's an altar. It's not a platform for talented people, although talented people are on here. And one of the biggest things that I've had educated and very talented people come and leave. And the complaint is there was no room for my talent here. Let me tell you something. These altars that we stand on in the churches today were built with sacrifice, with faith, with tears. They were never made to just occupy talented people. They were made so that we can proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. They were made so that we can stand upon and preach to generations and reach them for the honor and glory of God. I don't apologize for ever saying, you have great talent, but you don't have the heart of God. But our problem is this. There's always going to be a ministry that loves, don't love you. They love your gift more than what they love your soul. And when I stand up here, you might say, Pastor, why are you so picky? This is why I'm picky. Because my first pastor in the late 60s, when he was about 27 years old, as a Hispanic, and actually as his mom is Cherokee Indian and his dad is full-blooded Filipino, growing up in East LA, was sent down here. At 27, he was in charge of 7 churches, considered a bishop. 27. What were we doing at 27? Don't tell us. A man in his in the late 60s, bought a property on 18th Street in Long. And then with a small group of people started building a church. Brother Richard Jose. And I have to honor his wife, which is Anita Jose. Not only did they build a church, they built a people. And my family comes from that. So when I get up here, this is not the platform I built. When I get up here, and the reason I'm picky, and the reason I'm looking for character, and the reason that I'm looking for integrity, and the reason that I'm looking for a right heart is for this reason. Because there was a Richard Jose that sacrificed. There was a man named Benny Martinez that sacrificed. Not that one, another one. There was another guy named Isabel Ramirez. And there's another man named Raymond Segura, which is my father-in-law. And those men built the very altar that I stand on every Sunday morning. So don't mind me if I'm a little picky with who gets up here. This isn't a show. This isn't a program. This is where we preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I'm not there. I'm going to try my very best to honor their legacy. So you might say, well, what's our context? Why are you here? Why do you believe? I promise you it's the same story. Go back and think, what individual in your family came to Jesus? I did a funeral. The first thing is a friend of mine. And he reached out and the first words were this: hey, I'm calling you. I said, okay. Haven't talked to him in over a decade. And he says, I need you to do a funeral. It's for my mom. I said, okay. And this is what he says. The reason I'm calling you is I know you're not going to push your stuff on us. I don't know if that's good or bad. But I know I've heard you speak, and you speak really well. And I said, I'm there to do two things. I'm there to honor God. Three things, I always tell them. I'm there to honor God. I'm there to honor your loved one. And to share a word that encourages and comforts. That's what I'm there for. This is what I'm going to tell you. As I'm talking with him about his mother, he tells me later, he says, Pastor, he called me Andy. He said, Andy, I need to tell you something. I said, yeah. He said, my mom knew Jesus. He said, I didn't know this. He goes, when she was getting close to dying, she told us. They had never heard this. There's a guy that's older than I am. And she told him this: don't worry about me. I know Jesus. Because as a child, my mom taught us Jesus. And we went to church. And I received Christ. And I was baptized. I'm sorry I didn't share it with y'all. But have peace. I know where I'm going. He said, I had no idea. Here's what I'm telling you. You might be the first in your family that knows Jesus. And I honor you for that. Because just like I'm talking about the late 60s, I wasn't born in the 60s. I hope the devil didn't deceive y'all and y'all think, well, y'all were born in the 60s. I was not born in the 60s. The church was birthed then. And as I stand here, I'm here, and my point is because somebody else did it back then. You know why I'm here? You know why Hector's here? You know why his whole family's here? You know why my family over here is here? You know why? My grandmother tells me this story. I don't know if I've ever told you. My grandmother told me a story. I asked her, I said, how did y'all come to Jesus? She started crying immediately. Okay. I thought she was just getting emotional. And she said, you know what? She said, we met Brother Richard. He was preaching on the corner of 28th and Main. And your mom heard him preach and said, I know this message. And they received Christ, and they helped them start the church. They were right there. I can tell you where it's at, right just past the stockyards. The building still stands where they rented a space before they started building. And then she cried and she said, but that wasn't the beginning. She said, when your mom, she said, was little, she would clean and do everything and then say, can I go play? And I'd say, yeah, go play, but you better come back before dark. Yes, yes, yes. And my grandmother said, and I noticed that she would always take her little brother, my Uncle Andres, always take a little brother. And he never wanted to go. He goes, I always wonder, why doesn't he want to go? If they can go play, why doesn't he want to go? Well, she had no idea until one day it got dark and no, they weren't home. So she went to the park and she started looking for them. And they said, ¿Dónde está Socorrito? Named Socorro. ¿Dónde está Socorrito? And they looked at her and says, she's never here. But if you keep going, there's a little house, little building, and that's the Alleluia Church, meaning the charismatic church, the rowdy ones. She's in there. My grandmother got furious. She dragged her out, took her home, probably beat her, and told her, you can never come back here. This is not our religion. Mom was little. My grandmother says, all these years later, we come to Fort Worth and we're walking. And your mom hears a preacher talk about Jesus. And she says, Mom, remember that little church that you pulled me out of? They were preaching about Jesus. The whole family came to Jesus. My mom, my dad, and the hardest one of all, my grandmother. Because of that, our legacy is about Jesus. Every success that we have is because of Jesus. Every blessing we have because of Jesus. Because a little girl knew she would get beat, but decided to go into a little building, a little church, to hear about Jesus. A generation of a small little girl has impacted how many generations now? Don't you dare think that when your children come back from Sunday school and memorize a scripture, that it's, oh, how cute. No, it's powerful. Because that's what's keeping the generation of believers going. Because if it impacted our life and our legacy because of a little girl that one day said, I know that message. Ladies and gentlemen, David says, I will extol you, my God and my King forever and ever. But I can't do this alone. I need a generation. Here's the hard part. Y'all ready for this? The youth have always been a big part of our budget. We don't talk about that kind of stuff, but let me just tell you, we invest a lot in our youth. And many of them haven't been taught to give. But we don't look and list and say who's giving and who's not. We don't. It's the youth, and we invest in them, and we've always done that. And we've always said, don't ever let it be a deal about money that your young person can go. Don't let it be that. We'll figure it out, and we have generous people that always seem to say, hey, let me sponsor somebody. Let me sponsor somebody else. And God is good. We make it happen. Here's my point, and here's what's hard for us adults. Are you ready for this? Every adult be looking at me. The only way that our youth can be what they need to be is for us to enrich them, equip them. What does that look like? When David realized that God was not going to allow him to build the temple. Everybody understand that? David wanted to build it. God says, you have blood on your hands. He says, you're not building it. You know what most of us would have done? I think. You know what most of us would have done? I'm leaving. For God to say, David, you've done good. You knocked down some giants. You did some great things. You put us on the map. There is peace. There is prosperity. But you're not building it. Would have been mad. Would have been offended. Would have looked for another church. But you know what David did? Okay. So let me get the best engineers and architects here. And let me pick up an offering. Because I can't build it, but I can plan it. I can't build it, but I can fund it. And this is what's hard for us as adults. To look at a generation and think, man, they're too young, they don't appreciate. We didn't appreciate at one time. One day, I don't know when, 1 year, let me say 1 year, because some of you are going to be looking at me like, he's up to something. I'm not up to something. God's up to something. One day we have to be in a position as a church, talking to the church. One day we have to be in a position as a church to get the baton and to tell a coming generation, here, you can go further. You can climb higher. You can fight harder than what we can right now. You can preach the gospel more effectively. What we can't do is this. We can't hand the baton and hand them debt and hand them need. What we need to do is equip them, empower them, be an example to them, so that when we say, here you go. Here you go. Here's your water. Do you need anything else? That they'll walk up knowing that they didn't do this themselves. Knowing that this isn't a stage for talent. Knowing that not only pastors' sacrifices, but grandmothers that made tamales and burritos and everything else, that sacrificed everything in order to make something happen, that when they get up here, and this is our job, it's not going to be born in them. It's our job to connect with them and to praise the greatness of our God, that when they get up here, they know this here is not a platform. This here is a foundation that was built by people before me, that were sacrificed by people before me. And that when I get up here, it's not my word or opinion, it's the gospel of Jesus Christ that's being endowed in me to give to everyone that would hear. We can't forget that, but it requires all of us. Here's my call to everyone. My call to everyone is this. We can continue trying to find our own way. We can continue trying to fight for our opinions. We can continue to fight for titles. We can continue to sit there and look at our differences. Guys, that's tiring. And it's so frustrating. We have a job that God has given us. And we can't squander it. Because if we do, we squander a generation. I'm getting to understand and be okay that there might be giants that they're going to be more equipped to knock down. That's biblical. David was fighting a giant and he didn't have to be there. So somebody else came, fought it for him, killed the giant. And you know what he told the king? You need to go back. We got this. But if we continue to seek our own way, our own opinion, our own feelings, giants will come and go, and the church will ignore them. And we're even making the devil's job easier. Because the devil's going to say, I ain't doing nothing. They're the ones fighting. Or we can say this, I'm a chosen generation, sent here to exalt him. He's going to be my God. He's going to be my king. And my job is to proclaim the greatness of God to another generation, that they may proclaim it to another generation. Are you here with me today? Give him your best worship.